So thank you for joining us. I hope you guys have had a really great morning thus far. My name is Priya Aggarwal. I'm the VP of Product Marketing at 1010 Data. I'm just here to sort of intro Jon Katzur. What we want to do in this session is, I've been here about 18 months, and I've realized that there's a lot of really cool features in the platform, things that some clients are using but others aren't, things that we've newly released in the last couple of weeks, in the last few months. So we wanted to take this session to kind of show and tell a couple of the really cool features that we have, hoping that you'll be able to take away some of those ideas, some of those features, ask us more either during this session or at the demo showcases downstairs, or as you go back and start to think about how to leverage these features, these tools that we're going to showcase to you today back in your day-to-day life when you get back home and to your jobs. Jon's going to really do a lot of the demoing. I want to talk a little bit about the different buckets, just to ground us and sort of talk to you a little bit about what we're going to show and tell. We're going to focus a little bit on ad hoc data uploads. You heard this in the opening session this morning. We've made a lot of investment in making it easier to load data right in the user interface, making it friendlier for the business users to do this on their own, self-service. So we'll talk through a lot of those types of tools. Intuitive iterative analysis, this is something we really brought to market almost a year ago, but there's still a lot of clients that, for the comfort of XML or for the comfort of coding, don't really even realize how powerful the user interface has become, how much easier it is to do that ad hoc analysis. So we want to show and tell that a little bit more, get you guys a little bit more excited and familiar with that process. Multiple views of data analytics, it's a really small thing, but so powerful that you can toggle between different views as you do your analysis, toggle between that visualization and that grid-like view, so we'll show you that. Talk a little bit about the workspace management and the window management, simple things like renaming a workspace, and some of the things that you can do now that you probably weren't able to do 6 months ago or a year ago. And then talk a lot about scheduling and sharing analysis. A lot of you are starting to do and have always done, do your analysis. You need to share it, you need to schedule it, you need to send it to other coworkers, send it to other partners in your organization. And so we'll walk you through what are the capabilities for scheduling and sharing those analysis. Very high level. Jon's going to take you through the demo. Please ask questions either throughout or at the end. And obviously, if anything you want to see in more depth, then we welcome you to join us at the demo showcases downstairs. Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, Priya. Thanks, everyone, for being here. So first, hopefully, does everyone here use 1010 yourself? Are you users? I see nods. That's good. How much of the group are using kind of the old GUI, and how many people have moved to how many people here have moved to the newer versions of the newer GUI? All right, a few. So not enough though. So that's good. So we're gonna go through, and sometimes we like to joke, what's the hardest tool to learn? It's the second. So even if you have, even if there's lots of improvements, we understand that you know how to do stuff and you're experts in the old GUI, and so it might be, daunting to kind of imagine upgrading. But so part of what we wanted to do today was kind of walk you through things that are already available that you might not know about, and I would like to make it really a discussion. So if you have questions, just raise your hand, interrupt me. This is, it's a small group. We don't want to be presenting and have it. Yeah, let's hear it. I love it.
What's GUI?
Oh, thank you. That's a great, thank you for doing that. Like, we all get so jargony. So GUI is graphical user interface, and it's a really jargony term to say, like, when you interact with 1010, when you're using a drag and drop kind of visual tool, versus there are people here who write code and interact with 1010 in a less graphical way. So thank you, that was good. See everyone, pay attention, ask questions in the middle, makes it much more effective. But so we made a bunch of changes to that user interface, and the goal of the changes that we released in version 10 and improvements we're making and releasing in version 11 is to make it a lot easier for a drag and drop user who wants to work with really big data, but who's comfortable with working with Excel spreadsheets and doesn't want to write code. So that's most of what I'm going to talk about today. Any other questions? We got a good start. Okay, so first thing to note, so I'm going to jump in. This is going to be a demo, and just ask questions. We'll talk along the way. But I want to start by just saying, so for people who haven't seen, this is what Oh, people haven't seen you. You're not seeing anything, so that's great. One moment. Let's see. Now you'll see something. Do you see something? Yes. Okay, great. That's good. Zoom in. Okay, so people haven't seen. This is what you'll see when you log first in to the new GUI, and I'm gonna kind of walk you through what you can do and what it looks like once you're in. So, first, I'll note something that we've already gotten feedback about and want to do an even better job of is directing you right when you log in. This is a blank canvas. There's lots of advantages of blank canvas, but understand it also can be daunting to know where do I even begin. We're gonna make this bigger in the future, but you have this panel where an immediate place to click, and you can say, oh, I want to open the trillion row spreadsheet. I want to open Object Manager. I want to open tools to load right here. They're also up above in kind of a menu bar. But let's go through and kind of show an example. So the first thing I want to talk about is work we've done to make it easier to upload data. So Priya talked about this. Steve talked about this in self-service. And we've always had the ability for end users to upload data. First of all, are people here doing that today? Some nods. Okay, good. But we've heard feedback that we want to make it easier. So we've tried to make a lot of improvements. So the first one is we created a tool we call the table editor. And what this lets you do is just literally copy and paste data from Excel. So people have said this before, I have a lot of data in Excel. This is not for a billion row table or whatever, but if you have store list or attribute lists or other things that you want to load into 1010, and you don't even want to think about it like you're loading something, you just have data in Excel and you want to put it into 1010. We have a tool for that. We call it the table editor. So I'll show what that looks like. So here I have handy dandy custom hierarchy of my own. Let me just zoom in for a second so you get a feel. So I have some product data that I want to add into 1010. So I'll just go and copy and paste and just paste it in this cell. And it just says, oh, okay, here's a table that I can work with. And it will just let you copy and paste, and then you can add a little bit more to it if you want to describe it differently. So the way you'll do that is you can right click and add column info, and then you can pick the name and the label and the type and format. 1010 will just make an auto guess if you don't put information, but it can be helpful to just put it in. And something that's really, I think, cool about this that we've wanted to add for a while is in this interface, I can just actually literally cut and paste things around when I'm adding or editing data. So people have said that before. Like I'm used to in Excel being able to double click and change something, and the table editor lets you do that. So it's for loading data, but it's also for if I can go in and say, this is really Department 3 or whatever, and actually just make a change. So I warn you, don't do this if you don't want to make changes to the data. But it's kind of powerful if that's what you're interested in doing. So let me just remove those first rows. So now this is the hierarchy. I've given the name. I can input the type if I want or the format, but I'm just going to let 1010 auto do it. I can pick where I want it to go. Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
Does it give you, I guess, hints that you can't remember, I guess, what type or format, because I guess it's important for how I was reading the text when you're uploading it into databases. So if I don't necessarily know for format type, it should be an integer or alphanumeric, does it give you some type of hint or drop down box so that you don't get an error when you upload it?
So what will happen in this tool is it will just auto do that for you. Okay. In the sense that you don't need to guess if it's an int or an alpha. It will just scan the column and it will just make the best guess. Now I'll show you, we have another data uploading tool gives more flexibility, and that I'll show you that in a second, but that will make a guess and will let you change the guess. This one's more for just, I literally just have data in Excel, I just want to copy and paste, I don't even want to kind of think about that. But it's that's an important question. So thankfully, I don't know the type or format, but I'm just going to press save. And I'm on my phone Wi-Fi, so this is every click is going to be more challenging than I want it to be. But it will, go through and just auto column spec and load it. And then I can, from this interface, open this save table in the trillion row spreadsheet, and it knows the labels that I put in. That's a good question, and I'll show how. In the table uploader, which is the other tool I want to talk about, this is new in version 11, and This addresses a couple things that clients have talked to us about before. So first is sometimes I have a file and I just kind of wanted to drag and drop it into 1010. So we have this big drop file here thing. And I can take that same CPG hierarchy and just drop it in. And this is gonna be kind of a load wizard, sort of like in Excel when you have text to columns, if you're used to that functionality. And you'll see what happens is, pops up this preview mode. So this was, we looked at the column and we're making guesses that this is the format. So we think this is comma delimited, but you can override it. So if you're looking at the preview and it's not comma delimited, but for some reason 1010 thinks it is, you can override it. The row delimiter, things like that. I'll press next. I can just click to upload it, but I'll press next and I'll show you, I think really what your question was for this kind of interaction, which is here 1010 shows we think this is a text. But I can double click this and I'll say, no, 1010, you're wrong. It's actually an int or a float or whatever. Or I can do something like, change the format, uppercase, lowercase. On an integer, I can change the format, things like that. Make all those changes, I'll press next. So it's trying to be this kind of wizardy type view. One last thing that I'll show about this that we've also gotten feedback a lot before is right within load, you can pick which users have access to this. So if you want to share, and in the past, you've had to kind of know usernames, which personally drives me nuts. So I'm sure it drives users nuts. But this will just give you the list of users in your company, and you can just multi-select and say, I want to share this with Priya, and Sam, whatever, all these users I want to share it with. And it takes their first name, last name, and their user ID. So hopefully this encourages all of you who have no name, first name, no name, last name, and user profiles, which is a lot to actually make it accurate so your colleagues know what you're doing. So that's kind of this tool. You can obviously change the table and description, things like that, and then import. So let me pause there. Are those useful, practical tools people would use? Okay. Any questions about those two? All right. Lots of nodding. I like nodding. Yeah, please.
How are dates handled? Has anything changed? The formatting of dates, and I know that they're integers, but
So it's a really good question. So in version 11, nothing's changed yet, which is annoying, and we need to improve this. What he's referring to is that there's some finicky stuff when you're working with dates in 1010. People have probably experienced this a little bit. And what we're doing in version 12 to really directly address this, and I can even show a preview at the end, it would be good to get feedback, is we're building a utility that we're calling data scan. And Steve actually mentioned this a little bit in his presentation, but it will look at a column and it will use heuristics to essentially do smart description of here are the things that we think you might want to change in that column. And then it will make those suggestions. And if you click a button that says, yes, I agree, it will actually execute those suggestions. So one example is, we think this is a date that you didn't load as a date because the Excel date or CSV date or the different system date, and you'll press a button and it will just convert it to a date for you. That's like in beta right now, so we are not, before releasing that, we want to make sure we're not, whenever you're automating something for a user, you want to make really sure that you're not accidentally putting them in a lot of trouble. But so that's a version 12 thing. Other examples of that are things like if you're loading a zip code, we'll look and see, oh, there's a lot of 5-digit things here. We might want to pad a 0 up front so you don't need to worry about that. Things like if you have string, comma, space, string, this is probably a geo, city, state, or maybe it's a first name, last name. We'll give you options. And you can, if it's a first name, last name, split it. If it's a geo, we'll give you, hey, this is probably a city. This is probably a state. So it's trying to do that. But if you have ideas about other things to automate like that, we would love to hear. It's actually pretty easy to add them. It's hard to come up with all the things that are finicky or annoying, but we would love to get feedback on that. So, yeah, please.
Do customers control what, if you go into a customer portal, do they control what version you're on, or can you up your version in that portal anyway?
So that's a really good question. So let me talk about versions for a second for everyone, because I think it's interesting and maybe confusing at times. So something that is true about, let's say, the core technology of 1010 is that we've experienced ourselves the annoyance of when software as a service products like upgrade for you in general. So we've tried to make it so that an end user can log in to any live version of the system. And the way you'll do that is in the URL, you can specify exactly what version you want to log into. Let me caveat that there's buts to everything, right? So, but there are applications that are built that work in certain versions of 10.10. So for people who work on the Consumer Insights platform, that has a version that it works in. So if you want to use SIP, you need to be in that version. But you can use other versions of the system if you want to use those tools and then move into SIP for reporting. It's like, understand there's pros and cons to that, but the idea is instead of forcing you to only log in to the version that SIP works in or Consumer Insights platform works in, we want to give you the ability to, if you want to use a new tool, leverage that and go back and forth. Does that make sense?
You can essentially go to a higher version, upload all your attributes, and then go back to your
Exactly.
regular version.
Exactly. And something we're trying to do more of, probably people have gotten emails on SIP, especially, is we're upgrading SIP to be on a more modern version, and we're going to try to keep them more tightly integrated in the future. But we did a lot of work as part of version 11 to try to make that the case. But that will always be true, that you can always kind of go into betas and play with newer tools like data scan. The reason we designate it as beta, right, is that be careful, it's new, that kind of thing. Okay, so let me go into the section we called intuitive and interactive analysis, which is a great name. And we'll go into the trillion row spreadsheet. So this is kind of the core analytical tool that you'll use in 1010. And let me just open a table so you can get an example of it. So, oh man, everything is going to be slow today. Not pleasant. Sorry, on my phone. So some things that you'll note about the trillion row spreadsheet. I'll go through and show some analyses. But the first thing, it's probably familiar for people who've used the old GUI overall. You see your grid with rows and columns or whatever. But you'll immediately note to the left, instead of having sort of a panel that floats with all of the things you can do, to the left is all the actions that you can do at any point. And this will record each step in a timeline. I'll kind of talk about that in a second. And also, you have a much more, we always had a grid that you could right click on and do a little bit more, but this adds to that. So I can do something like, if I'm scrolling, this is on fake demo data or whatever, but I can right click and go to select, and I had always the options to pick a specific date, but I can also do greater than, less than, or up to and including or after. We're trying to make it easier to do top 10 lists, things like that. So you could just, after you do some analysis, just pick the top 10 rows, that kind of thing. So let's make a selection there. It'll run the analysis, pull back the results. And then once it does that, in this case, it worked on a date column. Something else that's a new enhancement you might not know about is that it now recognizes dates, so just automatically. So if you're working with a date field, it will just pull up a little calendar and knows it's a calendar, so you can pick, which hopefully makes things a little bit easier. So I'll pick October 1st. Go to the next step. You also have the ability to actually do kind of some other analyses with the right clicks. You can just go to analyze and get either quick statistics or a distribution or median and mode right there very quickly.
Is that the old question mark?
It's essentially the old question mark. Yeah, I mean, we've tried to split it because the old question mark on large volumes of data, you might get more information than you want, and so you're just like waiting longer than you want. So if you want the quick statistics, go that, distribution, click that kind of thing. Exactly though. Okay, so next I want to show is an example of link. So we're working with retail data, so I wanted to bring in a product master, say I'll go to link. When I do that, it will pull up a little manager that will show me all the data I have access to. Right within here, I can search. So if I want to look for product master, I can do that. And it will look through and let me pick. And then, I don't know if people see this is hopefully an improvement. It pulls up, here are all the columns I have in my table. Here are all the columns in the product master. And now if I want to do that VLOOKUP type thing from Excel, I can just drag and drop. So I say, hey, the way that this matches with the product master is SKU to SKU. Just drag it in. here's how you can do other things like before, keep all the rows, select just the rows you want, that kind of thing. You can also do more options. If I don't want to bring in all the columns, I only want to bring in one or two, I can do that. So people have asked us for that before. So I just want to bring in the department description or whatever. I don't want to bring in everything. I can do that without having to bring it in and then filter. So that's link. And then once I bring it in, this grid's really dynamic, so I can also do things like just drag and drop the columns around. So I want to rearrange the columns to look differently. A thing we've gotten asked a lot before. I can, pull things around. All part of kind of just trying to be more interactive and drag and drop. So the next one I want to show is changes in the way that select works. So if you go to select, you'll see that you have this, you have an ability to come in and either pick in a specific value. So for date, it will be a calendar. But if I go to department description, I can type things in. Beer is right on the screen. It's not just because of presentation stress, but it's right there. But I can come in and add potential kind of values here. Something that's different for heavy users, I want to note this, that in the past with 1010, if you inputted multiple things with spaces, 1010 treated that like an OR, right? So if you did store equals whatever, space whatever, it would do an OR. There's pros and cons to that, which you might have realized. If you're ever doing a string search and you were searching for dry space grocery, 1010 would interpret that as you're searching for dry and grocery, and that's really confusing, I think, for a lot of users. So we made a change to the way that works. So it will treat this as a single input, and then if you want to do an OR with a lot, you'll just press plus to do that. But at the same time, we know that is, there are times when you just have a big list of stores or whatever, and you just might want to copy and paste 100 stores in to look at something. So for that, you can go to more. More in general will expand with other options. That's kind of where we'll add additional features. But there's a bulk select option right here too, where if I have it, if I have that store list, so I'll show I have a store list in Excel. We also make it so you can just copy and paste from Excel to make a selection too. So you could imagine, you might have you could load it and then link it and then filter, but if you just literally want to copy and paste and look at a subset of stores, you can do that. Oh, I need to add store into my calculation to do that. So let me pause. Are these any questions? Do these make sense? Yeah, please.
So John, back in the old GUI, you used to be able to right-click on the actual column and hide it. Can you still do that with the new one?
Good question. Let's see. I don't actually. It looks like not. I guess the way you'll do that functionality is you can drag and drop it and then hide it within rearrange. If that's a particular one that is something that's used a lot, let's talk about it. There's no technical challenge in adding it. I think sometimes historically we make every single option available, and that's good because you have lots of flexibility, but we've heard feedback that it's like a lot of options available, and that might make things complicated at times. But if that's a frequent thing, that's an easy add. So
It's just because sometimes I only want to hide like
one.
two
Yeah.
columns. I have to go into the options to include or exclude columns. It's a couple more extra steps to do it through the timeline than actually just go straight on the screen.
Yeah, that's good feedback. Do other people do that? Is that a common use case? Yeah. Cool.
But I saw a little down arrow there when you were hovering over the column. What does that do?
Oh, you can sort. Oh, there you go. You can sort right on the column. I'll get it. So you can just do. Oh, hey. Well, there you go. Did you know that? Was that a trick? Apparently you can. I didn't realize it. It's good. We try to play games here, get the crowd involved. Does that actually do what?
I don't work at 1010.
But you know it better than we do. Apparently, that's good. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so we have it. This is the speed that we turn around customer feedback here. Just immediately within the second. Cool. Okay. All right. So let me add. So it's okay. You get the bulk edit. Let me go through as I dropped all my stuff everywhere. One moment. Okay. Let me show one other thing on this kind of phase, and then I'll jump to the next thing. But so another thing we got asked a lot about was, hey, 1010, you have this huge library of all these functions, and that's great, but it can be hard to kind of know which ones to use or what to do. And so we've added this expression builder, which is trying to feel more like Excel, where if I start typing in some function like, some G function for, this is gonna come up slowly because my Wi-Fi is slow. Oh man. Okay. This would be great if the Wi-Fi wasn't so slow, wasn't doing it. All right, well, demo. You'll imagine this is what happens. It will pull up like in Excel, and it will give a little highlight reel of here's the documentation for this function. And then something that's nice is that for any input that needs to take a column, you actually get the list of columns. So before in the old GUI, you'd kind of have that list below, if you can kind of envision it. And you'd probably often, that's what I did, just copy and paste the column name up. So this will actually give you a drop-down list of the columns that are available, and you can kind of press down, 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 tab. So if you wanted to, do some calculation, it will just here are the columns that you can use. So you can, if you don't remember that the column labeled margin has the column name, X margin or under whatever, it will convert that for you, and all you need to do is press down, down, tab. So that's another thing that works great when you're not on your phone Wi-Fi internally in a hotel. Okay, so next one I want to show in terms of a specific area of feedback that we got before is, I mentioned it in the other session, but just when I do a tabulation, I can do a lot of metrics. When I do a crosstab, I want to be able to do a lot of metrics, and you couldn't do that before. So we added that as well. So if I'm looking at something like date by store, and I want to get the sum of sales and something like the I don't know what would be interesting. Let's get unique count on SKUs. Let's do that. It's probably more interesting than anything else. I want to figure out how many unique SKUs were sold by day. I can go do that. Again, this is trying to be more pivot table-y and just also kind of more flexible in that way. So you can do that and then visualize it from there, and I'll show an example too. So that's sort of the more interactive feel. You'll notice that while this is all happening, here's that timeline getting built. So I can do things like, oh, I want to change the start date. I can click back up there and change the date and then run the whole analysis over again. So it's like instead of needing to go into the code or needing to press Control Z a bunch of times in Excel and then hope you don't mess it up and press Control Y, it keeps the list for you forever. And then you can also do things, any changes you've made here, it will keep forever too. So if you picked 7 different dates, and you're playing around, you can press back, then jump to the end, forward, jump to the end. Yeah.
Is there still an option here to use the right code, even though this is easier, but we're on the old system, if we were to ever migrate, we have a huge repository of code that we just copy and paste and modify.
It's okay. This is good. Let's get interactive because then I can show cool things that I want to show. So to the right, the next thing I was going to talk about is there's a lot of different views in this grid now, and one of the views is this will come up in a second. One of the views has the timeline to the left, macro code, the code next to it, and then the grid to the right. So we actually think that's nice for 2 reasons. One, so for experts who just want to write code, you can just go in and write code. There it is. But we also thought this would be a nice way to kind of, for a new user who wants to get into the code, to be able to work with it. Because you can see that to the left is the timeline, like the English translation of each step, and to the right is the code. So if I want to understand, what does the link table 2 do, I can just click this step and visually kind of see a representation of that. And then to the right, see the code that it generated. So that's why it doesn't replace it. We purposely made it next to each other to try to kind of make it easier for new users to learn. But for the big experts, you can hide it. And we know that there are experts who are just like, I want to write code. So you can do that too. Great question. Okay, so that's what you meant, hopefully? Okay, cool. Cool. Okay, so let's go into visualize because I want to show one other type of view. I'm just going to show something really, a histogram of sales for some store, I guess. And while you're doing this interactive stuff to the left, I kind of noted it before, but there's a bunch of different views to the right. And so there's Wi-Fi issues, and there's a bunch of different views to the right, which you can look at the grid. You can look single row view. I don't know how often people do this in the current GUI, but I find it really helpful for a new data set. So if you've worked with data for a long time, it might not be that relevant. But if you load a new table and you just want to look at one record and be able to see all the columns and really dive in when you have 100 columns or whatever, it can be really useful. So we have that. And then we also, when you have a visualization, you also have the option to put a visualization next to the grid, or a visualization grid at the same time. So I find that useful when I'm trying to do an analysis. I want to look at it visually, but I also just want to know the number behind something. And so you have that, have that here, where now I have a grid and a viz at the same time. You also have, let me just show one more. You also have a spreadsheet view. And just like we make it easy for you to copy and paste into 1010, we've heard people asking, hey, can I just copy and paste data out? I know I can export it or whatever, but the spreadsheet view lets you do that. So you can go in and you can just highlight stuff, and that's copyable. And then if I want to go into Excel, I can just put the data that I'm literally just looking at into Excel, which we've gotten feedback about before too. I'm running low on time, so I'm going to jump to the next thing. Thanks, Priya. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, so that's kind of a bunch of stuff in the trillion row spreadsheet. I'm going to talk about other window workspace capabilities. Let me pause. Any other questions on kind of these enhancements? Do these seem useful, hopefully? Okay, nods are good. Any other? Okay, we'll go to the next thing. So another one we've gotten feedback about in the past is, I have lots of windows open. In GUI 1, 1010 gives it its best guess name of what I think it is, and it's often not a great name for me. And then if I have 20 tabs open, that can be really annoying. So we let you go in. It's a little hidden, so I wanted to highlight this in the new and underutilized tools. But if I press this button, it will give me a field where I can rename this. So I can call this My Analysis Now, and then it will keep that there. So what's useful about that is if I then press minus and I have too much on my screen open, it will, at the bottom of the, hopefully it's not cut off, the bottom of the screen, it gives me just the tabs, like you'd see them in Excel or something else. And the one that I renamed is called My Analysis Now, so I can press that and it'll open it back up. You also have the ability, it's a keyboard shortcut, to do Control Backtick, which is kind of like a Command tab in a browser or Control tab in a browser. But so Control Backtick lets you flip through your windows. This is the kind of thing where if you don't use 1010 every day, you might not care about. But if for those of you who have 30 windows open all the time, hopefully it's helpful that you can flip through it. So some workspace stuff. Another thing that's new that we did based on feedback is, what if I don't want to save a query, I don't want to save a table, I just want to save everything I have open right now. So it's the end of the day, I'm in the middle of a bunch of things, I just want to come back to a snapshot of what I was doing this second. So we have that now under session, and you can save your workspace, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. And when you log back in later, you can reopen that. So this is for, I'm doing 20 analyses and different tabs. I'm in the middle. I don't even remember exactly where I am, and I've been there, and you just save the whole thing. So yeah, please.
So that's great. Is there a setting where I can extend, my idle time? Because nothing is been going to the water cooler for a little longer than I anticipated, and coming back and having to start.
Okay, so there's a couple components to that. So first, something that is new that we're trying to make that general situation better is just like I can save workspaces when I want to take a snapshot, 1010 will track recent workspaces. So I wouldn't rely on this for my life or whatever, but recent workspaces is capturing the last things that were open, and it's trying to autosave for you. You can think about it like a video game autosave or something. It's trying. It will not, again, it's not going to be every second, but it will do its best guess. And so here's the last 10 workspaces I have open. So if you're kicked out and you log back in, you can go here and open it at the last point, and it will actually tell you. You can see it, list of active windows. So it has what I had open, what I was doing the last 10 times. So it's trying to make that process better. In terms of actually changing your login, logout time, that is a conversation with your account manager, because there's system resource stuff that is the reason behind the logout. So that's something we can talk about later. Oh man, that hurts. I understand that. Hopefully this makes that process a little bit better at least. Yeah.
Is there a way to save ad hoc reports as you build them, so you can come back to them later if you know you're going to use them regularly?
Yeah, so that would be save.
I thought that was just a work session I'm talking about, for good.
So, okay, so you're saying, so, okay.
Like a library you're building of your personal library of all the code that you will use.
Yeah. Okay. So you can I actually only showed the Analyze tab, although I need to go through it. But under Develop, there's Save Query, and that will be just the query I'm looking at. And what's nice about it is it will keep the whole timeline too. So it saves the macro code, but also when you open this, it will open it as a trillion row spreadsheet. So if you have a downstream consumer who doesn't just want to look at the macro code, is that what you mean? Okay, cool. So so that's in Save Query. That's a good question. Yeah.
I know this doesn't relate to this, but the last question about the idle time, you can modify the idle time in the user account to expand it out.
If you're if you're an admin.
Yeah, I mean, you should just go to your admin and increase it. They won't do it.
Totem pole.
Oh, come on.
But it is, I will throw it out there because it wasn't suggested that that was an option.
It is. So it is definitely an option. It's something you can negotiate with your admin or whoever is working on your particular account. I'm going to stay out of that one because there's a whole bunch of stuff. Okay, and the last thing I want to talk about with a small amount of time left is we also have added within this an ability to kind of easily schedule reports that I've worked on. We've had consumer insights platform clients have worked with scheduling within SIP before. But this also makes it really easy to do that for just any query I was working on. And something new that we were asked about a lot, so we've done is, I'm not going to have time to go through all this stuff, but at the bottom here, you have this checkbox, and I'll alert you to it. So this says, require login to retrieve data. What that means, if it's checked, you're saying, this is data that's governed, or you want to take care that no one can forward an email and just get in, because it's my data and I want to take care of it and make sure that people who don't have access to 1010 don't see it. But if I choose to uncheck it, it will just attach the results as an email. And we've gotten feedback a lot that people would love to have email attachments. The reason we didn't do that before was that we had feedback from other people that we're nervous about being able, if you have attachments, then people who aren't credentialed could kind of see data that they're not supposed to. So the way that we're setting this up to kind of protect against that use case is this checkbox. If checked, it will be a link. If unchecked, you get an attachment. So you can kind of decide the data that you're working with. Is this something where the ease of the attachment outweighs the the annoyance of login or whatever? Yeah, please.
I set up a scheduled job, and for the recipient to receive my report, they'd have to be set up for scheduler as well. So is that like a normal thing, or shouldn't I be able to send a report to anybody who has access to that?
You should be able to. That should work now. So, that's something we should probably talk about. I think that should just work for you today. So there's some problem we got to talk about.
So schedule, sometimes we are using schedule to save a table.
Yeah.
Instead of sending a report.
Yeah.
So sometimes we save like table has like million records. So
Yeah.
we don't need to go to send the report because the attachment will be big.
Yeah, sure.
So any options we just do.
Yeah, so if you there's advanced options, and I think that should, no, not there. There should be an option to do that. I don't remember.
To not send the report or send an email.
Save, that is not a good name at all, but okay, apparently Save Report None is the way to do that. We should make that a better name, because I didn't know what that was. Nice. That's Kevin Goss, our technical account manager for Dollar General. He knows this stuff good, just ask him questions. Okay, we should rename that, though. That's a terrible name. I'll write that down. Okay, cool, good question. All right, I think we have about 2 more minutes. Any ideas or questions? Or I mean, overall, do we think we're moving in the right track overall? Is this good? Okay, cool. Any other ideas or? All right, well, thanks for asking questions along the way. This was really helpful for me. If you have other ideas, shoot them into 1010 and all the various ways we talked about this morning, and we really appreciate your feedback. Thanks.